Because people have been requesting this for over a year, today I'm going to make a Phase 2 Clone Trooper helmet. For this build, I used these standard prop making tools, EVA foam, craft foam, it's the same thing, contact cement or hot glue, white Plastidip, and white EVA foam. Hey guys, I'm a Jake in the box. Who are you?
I'm Sir Patrick Stewart's body double. And scene. That'll be $3,500.
So Patreon, Quick Seal, a transparent envelope, sanding machines, and safety stuff. All these things can be found on Amazon. Amazon, please sponsor me. Alright, so there are many variations of Clone Trooper helmets, so it's important that your reference material is accurate to the helmet that you're trying to make. First, I'm pulling templates from this toy helmet that I modified ever so slightly in a previous video. I'm aware that this isn't the Phase 2 helmet, but like 80% of the parts are exactly the same, so that saves me like 80% of the work. I transferred the tape and foil shapes onto cardboard so that they'd have some rigidity. Is that a word? They'd be held up to being traced, is what I'm saying. Then I traced them onto white foam with a pencil. Normally I'd use a Sharpie, but I'm not going to be painting these as heavily as I normally would. When you're cutting a curve into EVA foam with a knife, it's going to want to angle inward, and if that cut isn't at a perfect 90-degree angle, then the edges aren't really going to line up. So I cleaned up all the curved cuts on my belt sander. For the top of the helmet, I'm trying something a little different this time. I'm overlapping the stencil in the front for the top two dome pieces, just to try and avoid having a visible seam. I did that before with the Knights of Ren helmet, and it didn't really work, but luckily that seam ended up getting covered up just because of the way that helmet is. Once all the pieces are cut, I erased any visible pencil before I heat formed the pieces. Heat forming the foam makes it easier to shape and also allows it to retain a curved shape, although it helps to place the curved pieces inside braces while they cool, such as these spent tape tubes. I contact cemented those pieces together, which is apparently all happening out of frame. That's good job, Jake. As I'm applying this, I'm making sure the registration marks are lining up. Am I though? Doesn't seem to be working out. I don't know, it's dome shaped in the end, so I guess that's all that matters. The dome usually comes out super lumpy, but that gets evened out later by reheating it up after the glue has had a chance to set. What I was going for was lining up the base instead of the registration marks. I have a sneaking suspicion that some of my registration marks aren't perfect, so I had to smooth this out a bit on my belt sander. One of the things that makes this helmet unusual is that the wall is actually inset, and I cut this piece at 22 by 10.5 inches. I think it ends up being 7 inches. It's definitely gonna have to be cut later, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I heat formed that and left it to cool in a leftover offcut from the pet nuke prop. That's held in there with contact cement, by the way. In order to keep it from pulling itself apart, I stuck it on top of a roll of EVA foam that I wasn't using, and then borrowed the belt from the pet nuke prop to hold it down. Originally I wanted to cut the faceplate after I attached it, but that was just going to be way too complicated. So I did that first while it was nice and flat. This should be a mirror image, but those corners aren't great, and that line isn't so great. I just need to take off a little bit off of there, and a little bit off of there. Sanded it a bit and began to heat form it section by section. And yes, the answer to your question is this is burning my arm right now. Work through the pain. That's terrible advice, don't do that. Okay. So now they're sort of bent inward. So I gotta make it like that. Ah, look at that. Oh, my knuckle just touched the thing. That's great. How many burns am I gonna get? The stove is hot. The next day, when I was sure the glue had set up, I began attaching all the larger details. Put back my belt, I cut off the excess EVA for the walls, I cut out notches for the visor, and I glued on the visor. I tried to leave a significant amount of unglued space underneath so that later when I'd have to attach the visor itself, I'd just be able to slide it in there. Oh, and I wrote on the inside to remind me not to put glue on those parts. Hey everybody, just want to take a moment to thank all my Patreon supporters, whom I for once don't have to get out of the way of. Have I finally got enough room for the really long names? Took me long enough. Oh, what if I did lower thirds instead? Nope. Yes, this video took a really long time to produce, and yes, that is a funding issue, but without my patrons, I wouldn't have been able to make it at all. Their contribution covered such things as white EVA foam, which I can only order online, and the shipping fees that go along with that, as well as other prop making tools and supplies. Let's let those scroll by. It's my man, Kevin. So if you like what I do and can afford to So if you like what I do.
So if you like what I do on this channel, Queen's English.
So if you like what I do on this channel and can afford to part with $1 or $2 each month, then consider heading on over to the Patreon page. Link below, not yet. Back to the build. We're doing back to the build. I need a script template is what I need. I'm covering up all the seams with white quick seal. You don't need to do this to any of the seams that are going to get covered up later by helmet details. For instance, this one that'll end up under the center ridge. I'm constantly sharpening my knife as I do this so that it's making the cleanest cuts possible, which will cut down on the sand. Having said that, I totally had to sand quite a bit, as it turned out. But once I had the whole thing together and attached, I moved on to the lower front portion. I connected the cheekbone plates with scrap foam, added black foam to the top of that, and made the vents out of strips of standard gray. I made some carefully calculated adjustments and covered them with thin craft foam from Michaels. Once that was on, I was able to get a sense of how far down the brim should be, so I trimmed off the excess. I think it was 2.5 inches. I didn't really measure it. Kind of varies from person to person anyway. I made the nozzles after a lot of trial and error. Basically, they're just tubes. Each slit in the end used to be a triangle. You just glue and bend those pieces together, then smooth them out on the belt sander and fill in the seams with putty, and then probably sand them again. For the vents themselves, I'm cutting 3D print support lattice into circles and sticking them into PVC offcuts because that's an incredibly specific material. An alternative can be screen door mesh. I use some silver rub and buff to make them look a little less plasticky. Oh, so I filmed these out of sequence, but these are the ear greablies and the little circular node that goes on the back. Before I glued the nozzles in place, I put in these O-rings to hold the vents. Are they vents? They look like faucets. They're vents or speakers. Once I attached those, I cut and heat formed these shapes to make up the rounded lower rim and the thesaurus. So the last time I made a trooper helmet kinda like this, I supported this shape with ribs on the inside, kinda like the inside of an airplane wing. And that worked for the video, but over time they started to show through. So this time I'm trying to support the entire tube evenly by filling up that entire space with scrap material. Oh, by the way, since those supports are gonna be totally enclosed and require no kind of lasting structural integrity at all, they're going to be held together with hot glue, while the white exterior foam parts, which are going to be under constant tension, are held on with contact cement.
Oh, people are always texting me when I cannot answer.
I use gator clamps with packaging foam as cushioning in between the clamp and the helmet until the glue sets completely. But even with the cushioning, the clamp still left a bit of an indentation onto the foam. It eventually reformed itself, but it took literally all day. Then I cut up all the shapes for the back of the helmet and the sides. I attached those with contact cement, which mostly worked except for the side pieces. That'll happen if you lay on the glue too thick or you apply the parts too soon before it's had a chance to dry and get tacky. So I ripped them up, heat formed them to have a slight curve, about the same as the helmet itself, and then glued them back down again. Then I glued on the rest of the details and started the long and tedious process of covering up all of my mistakes. This includes covering up visible gaps with pieces of foam and filling in seams with quick seal. I also added these 3 strips to either side.
So to prep this for Plastidip, I gotta put just something behind the eyes to push it out a bit more, because right now he's kind of squinting a bit. Put some foam spacers in there just to keep this from touching, you know?
I cut the visor out of an envelope because I'm finally out of nightshade spray paint. I determined the size by going just a little bit outside my templates and just kind of nestled it in there, using a few random foam scraps to hold it down. The black stripe is just a strip of foam. I didn't use a lot of glue in this one. I put in the nozzles and really wanted to call it done from here. There's still a little bit of painting to do. Most of it was just touch up, either with quick seal or white Plastidip, which normally you want to use to create a surface that you can paint onto EVA foam, but in this case the Plastidip acts both as primer and paint because it's just white. But if you wanted to put unique, character specific paint on top of it, like Cody or Rex, then you would definitely want to put down the white Plastidip so that you have a surface to paint onto. Side note, this is actually supposed to be a little trench in the side of the helmet, not just to paint it on decal. But I realized that way too late to apply it to my helmet. So I'm going to show you real quick on a piece of scrap how you would do that. That would have best been done after the base wall was attached, but before all the greeblies were added. And there it is, one Phase 2 Clone Trooper helmet. Came out pretty good. I think this is my best Stormtrooper helmet that I've ever done, so I'm happy with it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for being patient with this build. Let me know what you want to see me build next in comments. I actually haven't written the outro yet, so here's a disembodied voice. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, then you can subscribe or support me on Patreon so that I can keep making these videos. And I've been doing this for about a decade now, so until next time, there's literally hundreds of these tutorials that you can watch. Jake out.